There you go. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this map, Dan and I believe Gisela helped make. Anyway, I'm going to reference this. We're using this as a map to help people look at how they might be able to use the property. That's in the document that people haven't had a chance to review yet. But I'm going to use it as a vehicle to explain what my particular vision for the property is. So I'm going to begin, and I thank you for being here tonight. So tonight, I'd like to encourage everybody in attendance and all who may watch the recording of this meeting and other meetings coming up to take notes of suggestions or directions or approaches and specific ideas that resonate with the listener and the observer. My hope is that each observer of this and upcoming presentations by the HRA members will be able to identify themes which have the potential to allow the HRA, the select board, the planning board, and neighbors in Hull to see the utilization of an urban renewal plan that embraces an awareness of the collaboration necessary to achieve a plan that is built upon listening to each other, collaborating, and compromising. I wanted to be the first member of the HRA to share my thoughts with you, and I also wish to encourage the members of the select board to watch the recordings in order to offer me some direct suggestions, options, confirmation, or alternatives to what I will be sharing this evening. These are my personal thoughts and dreams framed by more than 48 years as a member of the Hull community and an active volunteer within the community. My suggestions for the HRA property will be explored, enhanced, and integrated with the ideas of other HRA members as we move through the next few weeks, all with the objective of achieving an urban renewal plan that works for the entire community. But because we listened, collaborated, and reached compromise, which benefits everyone. So we really have to listen to each other, take notes of the things that make sense to us, and then challenge those that don't. So I ask you all to take notes, be prepared to send me your comments, suggestions via I have a question for the HRA on our website, just when we finish talking about. That way, your comments will go to all the members of I got to turn the page of my notes, of the HRA, and we will hold your submitted comments until all members have presented their dreams for the property. So feel free to send your comments in, but we won't be addressing them until everybody gets a chance to put their full point of view out to the public that you're all here to hear tonight. So with that overview of the process, I'll begin to share my ideas. And I've divided my personal pitch into 3 parts. My current thinking, my current actions that I would encourage we take, intermediate actions that may make sense based upon the world, and how I see the urban renewal plan taking form. So there's going to be 3 parts to this, and I'm going to use this little map as a vehicle. So my current suggested actions. We presently have been publishing periodic HRA information box information in the Hull Times to keep citizens abreast of what we're doing or to further explain topics discussed in our meetings. That's part of that communication approach that we've been trying to use. I'd like the HRA to reach out to Blue Bikes to have Hull become a part of this collaboration. With over 4,500 bikes across 13 municipalities, the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts is the sponsor of Blue Bikes, and collaborating with the town of Hull, we could easily arrange to have a blue bike rack at the HRA property and another rack at the Pemberton Pier for the summer. This would make the HRA property a hub for the community. So that's one of the things I think is a current activity that could happen. I'd like the HRA to become a supporting patron of the second annual Adopt a Lamppost campaign for the 2024 holiday season, with a request to formally light the gazebo and to adorn the light poles along the Topics Road through the HRA property, those big, tall light poles. It would be sort of nice to see that whole stretch all added to Surfside. My next piece would be to have HRA to become a member of the North and South Rivers Watershed Association, as well as the Ware River Watershed Association, mainly to be kept aware of current developments in watershed knowledge and management. And I've been staying on top of those, but I think we need to become a part of it as well. I would like to install some pollinator gardens along Ware River Park. If you look on the map, you'll see Ware River Park is the area that is grassy and it faces the World's End. These would be established. We've talked, a number of members and I have talked about this, about outlining sections of the property where we'll let the grass grow into long rectangles or a shape. And we won't cut that grass because it will encourage the bees and the birds to pollinate more readily. And a similar section along the waterfront, along the bay, could be allowed to grow, so it might encourage the pollination of, oh my goodness, the monarch butterfly feeding of, and I can't remember the name of the food. Yeah, don't worry about it, but pollinator gardens. So we would make that a little bit more viable. I also did a little bit of research over the last number of months that I mentioned on previous occasion when we went to World's End, to the outcropping of rocks that is literally right in the same path of the wind that we get on the HRA property. And we looked at the number of plants that were growing there and discovered that there were wild blueberries, low bush blueberries, and all kinds of grasses growing there. So I reached out to the folks at the trustees of reservation, and I had the opportunity to speak to Julie Richburg, the ecologist for the trustees. And she explained to me that those plants are in a family called Ericaceae. It's a family of plants that are heaths and heathers, and they are the kinds of plants that grow with very little nutrient in the ground. And that seems to me to be the kinds of plants that we should be thinking about planting on the HRA property, so we can see what will work and what won't, because those literally have lived through the winds that we're seeing right now. They survive and they thrive. And I also, with her assistance, identified a list of arborists and horticulturists who they suggested might be appropriate people to help with that if we ever got to that particular point. And then I think I mentioned earlier this week, I'll be walking the perimeter of the HRA property to begin figuring out what may be the most effective and most cost-efficient manner to secure the property for the upcoming season. Most of us realize the timbers and the telephone pole barriers are very irregular and rapidly decomposing. I'd like the HRA to improve the safety, security, and visual image of the current HRA property. And then the next thing that I would like to see happen, and this will come up in a meeting at some point because it will cost money, like many of the things. I'd like to see the HRA arrange for a free shuttle bus service from the DCR lots to the HR lots on a regular basis on Saturday and Sundays from June 1st to September 2nd. This shuttle will allow folks who park at the HRA lots to move easily from the HRA parking areas to the restaurants and amenities along the front beach of Nantasket Avenue. And even though there will be vendors theoretically along the HRA lot, if people have the chance to not move their vehicle and to go to another spot in the town, that will only expand the economic vitality of the entire region. The next item is, that the HRA is planning a visit from the Stars Above Circus for July 2nd and 3rd of this particular season. It's a demonstration event to illuminate the ability of the HRA to activate the property. I will be serving as the project manager for the event that will take place in the Hull Shore Common area on that map, and that's the corner that's closest to the hotel. Starting this summer, I'd like to explore, and I'll do this on my own time kind of thing, investigate the potential of setting up a winter ice sculpture event for the HRA property for next winter, because they do it in the city all the time. They do it in Quincy, and it's almost like we have all this land. Maybe this would work. Maybe it won't. We'll find out. I'd like also the HRA to discover who owns and manages the electronic signs that currently exist here in Hull. I think there are 3 of them, and I'd like to know how the HRA may be able to get onto the queue to post on those electronic signs. And then, based upon the input from a citizen submission, with whatever incremental improvement we make, I'd like the HRA to establish a baseline template for the use of QR codes to explain various aspects of history, events, geology, horticulture as we begin, and then continue to incrementally improve the HRA property. This will allow us to have QR codes to identify the plantings on the property. If we decide to do other kinds of improvements, they also could be explained, and the history could be explained. And that came from one of the citizens' submissions. For this upcoming season, I will work with the HRA membership and the selected provider of parking on the HRA property to install comprehensive signage, because we've included that in the RFP to make sure we're gonna have good signage. We have to retrain everybody and educate everybody as to how parking will happen. And the HRA is actively reaching out to learn as much as we can about the Nantasket Beach Trust that was set up many years ago to dedicate a percentage of the DCR Nantasket Beach Reservation parking fees toward the town of Hull to help cover the expenses for public safety management at Nantasket Beach Reservation during the summer season. We heard about that earlier. So those are the things that I think we can be doing immediately. And then over an intermediate period of time, as we work to reach a viable urban renewal plan, and as soon as we have an approved urban renewal plan that has evolved due to this collaboration and compromising from all parties involved, there will be a period of time when, before anything would actually happen, meaning any kind of construction or improvement or whatever, the HRA will still need to manage the property and prepare for the next steps in whatever has been approved. The following ideas may be appropriate intermediate actions for us to take. And they are, beginning as soon as possible, I would like us to reach out to State Senator O'Connor and our State Representative Moschino to help us establish a relationship and partnership with the MBTA to permit parking in designated areas at the Nantasket Junction and Cohasset Station train parking lots. This was another suggestion that emerged from citizen input during our meetings this past season. Concurrent with this new relationship would be a regularly scheduled beach shuttle from the lots to Nantasket Beach. This action will begin to educate beachgoers that there is a more direct route to the beach with less hassle and reliable transport. So that's something I hope we might consider doing. Again, another is we will begin to consider and potentially experiment with a bonfire on a barge on the bay side, or my personal favorite would be to replicate the magic of Providence water fire on the bay during high tides during the summer season. The Providence water fire is a magnificent vehicle for community engagement, entertainment, and collaboration within and from outside the community. On high tide evenings, this will make the area of the Ware River Park on the map and all of the surfside areas a destination for the evening. Another thing I'd like to see as an intermediate activity would begin exploring the potential of securing an artist to create a sculpture depicting a breeches buoy or the Nantasket lifeboat with Joshua James for eventual placement within the future HRA improvement area. And something like this would be one of those subscription donations, collecting to make enough money to be able to make something like that happen. I think that would make people feel incredibly proud and prideful. Additionally, research and exploration for concrete, stone, chess, checker tables, and benches in a section of the property, possibly near the gazebo. Another item would be to begin to coordinate some events using the mobile stage approach, also promoted by a citizen's suggestion this past year. We will need to address the placement of installing electrical and water junctions for the property. And you'll see later, I have more detail on that, but I think we can start on that sooner than later. The next item that I would like to see us think about would be to create an artist competition for the painting of life-size carousel horses that would be auctioned off to individuals or businesses in celebration of the Paragon Carousel's 100th anniversary in 2025. This would be a collaboration of, I would imagine, Hull artists and the Friends of the Paragon Carousel and the HRA, so that we could make it really a viable, dramatic event for the community. And it would be like when you go to Boston, you see they had I think they had cows this last year in the city. I'm not sure, but every city has things like this periodically. Another area of interest that would not be of interest to me, but it would be to some people, promoting winter surfing on Nantasket Beach with free parking, and as suggested by another citizen submission, maybe a winter surfing kayak, not a kayak, a kiosk or a temporary structure as an operating center with lights onto the ocean for evening surfing. And another, we could begin to initiate a program to enhance the eelgrass along the Ware River on the bay side of the HRA property. Apparently, the Environmental Protection Agency indicates that eelgrass helps to store carbon, so that might be a good thing for us to get engaged in. There's an opportunity to collaborate with Coastal Protection Solutions and their wave breaker solution to reducing the height and velocity of ocean waves. The inventor of this new technology is part of the Innovation Lab at Harvard Graduate School of Design and recently won the Ingenuity Award from the Innovation Lab. Alex Berkowitz, the inventor, visited with me here in Hull one day a couple of weeks ago so that she could see the varied environments that may be suitable for her continued research and development. And that particular bit of information came to me because I watched that Chronicle show and she was on it. She came down and looked at the whole perimeter, the coastline of Hull. And all of the current suggestions would still be engaged at that time. Now, those are all the things that I think we have to be doing moving on, but now I'll tell you what I'd like to see on the property. My improvement plan for the HRA. For the last few years, as I have learned more and understood more about the opportunities and challenges of this HRA property, I have been encouraging the use of the word improvement to the property. This is how I am addressing the crafting of this urban renewal plan. Here are some of the components I think will be valuable as we move toward collaboration and eventual compromise to create an urban renewal plan that will be approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And now it's known as, thank you, Chris, for teaching me this, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. So it's no longer DHCD, it's EOHLC, for those of us who like to remember those letters. Going back to 2020, I have been operating on the principle of improving the HRA property to honor the taking of 76 residential properties and displacing 125 citizens of Hull in the 1960s and the 1970s. I've consistently made reference to improvement in order to create sustainable parkland, and any development would be deed restricted housing, with 15 to 20% being designated for first responders, veterans, and seniors. Listening to all the citizen submissions these past months and reflecting on the opportunities I think exist here in the summary of what I'd like to submit for consideration by my colleagues on the HRA and by my colleagues on the Select Board and Planning Board. The citizen submissions help generate a lot of what was in my head and I hadn't really clarified. I do believe we need some component of housing in our urban renewal plan, and this housing should be deed restricted and made to be housing designated for first responders, veterans, and seniors. Although I understand that rental property does not generate the same dollar amount to the town of Hull bottom line, I believe rental units will help with an increasing challenge to our community. Data. By 2030, 51% of Hull's population will be 45 years or older. By 2030, 30% of Hull's population will be 60 years of age or older. This data and the following data come from the Housing Production Plan of Hull, which was approved by the Town of Hull, the Housing Production Plan Advisory Group, and the Planning Board in July of 2022. At that time, there were 10,072 people in Hull, according to the 2020 census. It's projected that our number will go to 9,523 by 2030 in that report. This report used a household total of 4,765 households, of which 54 were families, 54% were families, and 46% were non-families who shared residences. So that was, I'm sorry, someone is on microphone.
Hey,
Rebecca, can you please mute yourself?
You gotta turn your thing on, whatever. Thank you. Yeah, I thought maybe that was my head spinning. Anyway, this is right from that report. The report also stated that by 2030, 60% of households in Hull will be led by a person 60 years or older. And in my opinion, based upon all this data and my general sense, and what drives my upcoming comments, is that we have a need for housing to allow the many folks who are currently 45 to 60 years old to be able to consider movement into housing that may be affordable and less demanding in terms of maintenance and upkeep. The movement of this cohort of Hull citizens to well-designed and constructed rental units will potentially allow younger families who are currently living in Hull in smaller homes. They may be able to continue the cycle of development by buying a senior's home that needs work and make the improvement necessary over time, just the way many of us did in years past. This cycle of movement is classic in many locations, with the difference here being that I would like the departing seniors to be able to stay in their beloved community of Hull, but maybe in a new neighborhood. And that ultimately what leads me to this is my particular dream. A new neighborhood of structures that look like single-family homes, but are really apartment buildings. Buildings that look like Doc Bergen's home, or some of the newer homes with upwards of 6,000 square feet on 3 floors. No personal garages, but a parking area for the new neighborhood. In my opinion, the option would be to create this new neighborhood adjacent to Doc Bergen's property with 6 structures, homes, similar in design to Doc Bergen's property, each with 8 units of varying sizes in each building. In the spirit of recognizing there were concerns about building anything on the 5th Street Lot A, and everybody knows where that is, Lot A, an option would be to put the 6 residential looking buildings, these homes, on the section of Lot B adjacent to the Edgewater Avenue driveway that I was so enamored with in previous citizen submissions. And 2 of those homes would face Nantasket Avenue, and they'd be lined up in a sequence of 3 along the driveway. So it could either be in Lot A or Lot B, and I'm not necessarily caring where they are. I just want there to be a new neighborhood for some people to be able to move to and stay in the community. There, and both opportunities would be no personal garages, but a parking area for new neighborhood, just as any development would have to have. But I'm not a developer. I only can share my idea. Not being fully knowledgeable of construction costs and values, I don't know how 48 units translate into profit for a development company. But I do know that some of the parks I would like to see and some of the amenities I was introduced to during the citizen submissions will cost money. And I would like to be able to support both housing for first responders, veterans, and seniors, as well as create wonderful amenities for the general Hull community. Here are some of the amenities that I would like to see. Most of these emerged from the presentations of citizens during our citizen submission period. The area south of any potential residential area on Lot B would be another park. The type of park will be driven by available financial resources, as stated earlier. This park would cover all of the space up until and including Hull Shore Common. So when you look at the big expanse of Lot B, there might be 6 buildings that look like Doc Bergen's house, but the rest of it would be some type of parkland that I am not equipped to decide what it's going to look like, but it would be some kind of park. Now, I personally like the feel and the use of the contoured seating that allowed people to relax in a portion of the community with the ocean on one side and the bay on the other. And I recall from one of the citizen submissions, the name was the Agora seating. And I'd suggest that may be a place along Hull Shore Common where that would find a home. And I also would want to see a series of electrical water plug-and-play stations so that we could be leveraging the other piece that came up from the citizen submissions, and that was the mobile stage. And I would suggest that there would be a plug-and-play on the south end of the north and south end of Ware River Park, that's facing the World's End. There would be 2 there. And then there'd be 3 on the Lot B, that big park, 1 on the Nantasket Nantasket Avenue side, and 2 along the ocean side. So there'd be plenty of opportunity to use that mobile stage in a variety of areas. And then along the Ware River Park, following those of you that have walked there, and many people, I think everybody has done that, there's a well-worn walking path around the bay. I would eventually personally like to see a slightly raised path similar to portions of the High Line in Manhattan, which would have cantilevered projections over the water. Sometimes it's mud, but cantilevered projections, because I don't think we can put anything in the area of ACEC area according to the regulations. And this would create a beautiful environment for strollers and visitors and general enjoyment of the area. Another piece that I think is critical and I think it has to happen somewhere, but I'm not sure where. We need a transportation hub that's going to allow a bus to come in and let people off and regularly be that transport that I had suggested in my intermittent activity of trying to get buses from the train station to bring people to the beach, because that would be, in my mind, the best of both worlds. The notion of a hub, I'm not sure where it would go, but we do have that Samoset Avenue section, which is west of Lot A, next to the Memorial Park and the gazebo, the War Memorial gazebo. That space, if that is going to be abandoned at some point, that I believe was talked about as part of the two-way road work, which I didn't include in this because I wanted to demonstrate what could happen with the existing reality. That might be the place where that could be a bus stop in the middle of a park area. But we need to have a viable place for people to use public transport. So that would be part of my drill there. And the next piece is the portion of the HRA property identified as the light plant park. If you look on that map, that is along Edgewater. Adjacent to it is the light plant. I'm hoping that this is a property that the HRA might consider making available to the town of Hull, using it as the place for a public safety building. So we would have a unified place for fire and police in the community. And this might also give us the opportunity to do something that I pitched a million years ago. And that was to have some section of the HRA property to demonstrate the Helix turbines that can be interesting and beautiful and also can generate some power, but they're not as massive as the big ones that we presently have had or have now. But they could give homage to the light plant and Electric Avenue, as it used to be called. So those are the things that I would like to see happen. And I know that it's a big truckload of ideas, but I'm hoping that my ideas, both the crazy and the simple, might be heard by people who have similar thoughts. And by going through this process with all of the members of the HRA, and then eventually, hopefully, when the select board chimes in and the planning board chimes in, there's got to be things that everybody is going to say, yeah, I can agree to that. And that ultimately is my dream, my hope, that we can come to some compromise that will work for more of us than we think. So that is my presentation, and my hope that we'll have more and more ideas as the weeks evolve. But I will ask people, please send your questions or comments to the HRA through the HRA website, so everybody hears it and everybody gets it. So that's it. I have nothing else for tonight.